in terms of picking what to do, I want to report to all of you that in my whole life, I've never succeeded much in something I wasn't interested in. So I don't think you're going to succeed if what you're doing all day doesn't interest you. And you've got to find something you're interested in, because it's just too much to expect of human nature that you're going to be very good at something you deeply dislike doing. And so that's one big issue. And of course, you have to play in a game where you've got some unusual talents. You do not want to play, if you're 5'1", you don't want to play basketball against a guy that's 8'3". It's just too hard. And so you got to figure out a game where you have an advantage, and it has to be something you're deeply interested in.
Wisdom acquisition was a moral duty. It's not something you do just to advance in life. Wisdom acquisition is a moral duty. And there's a corollary to that proposition, which is very important. It means that you're hooked for lifetime learning. And without lifetime learning, you people are not going to do very well. You are not going to get very far in life based on what you already know. You're going to advance in life by what you're going to learn after you leave here. If you take Berkshire Hathaway, which is certainly one of the best regarded corporations in the world, and it may have the best long-term investment record in the entire history of civilization. The skill that got Berkshire through one decade would not have sufficed to get it through the next decade with the achievements made. Without Warren Buffett being a learning machine, continuous learning machine, the record would have been absolutely impossible. The same is true at lower walks of life. I constantly see people rise in life who were not the smartest, sometimes not even the most diligent, but they are learning machines. They go to bed every night a little wiser than they were when they got up. And boy, does that habit help, particularly when you have a long run ahead of you.
You actually start a law firm and then practice law for some period of time.
Well, I had no alternative.
And then you actually...
I had an army of children almost immediately. I painted myself in quite a corner.
Yeah. So zero choice is pretty powerful.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes, of course.
So you practice law and then you leave law in the firm that you helped found and move over to investments.
Well, but
help us understand that.
That sounds miraculous. In fact, it was rather interesting. I probably got paid about $350,000 in my first 13 years of law practice total. And I had an army of children and no capital to start with. And when I chose this alternative career, I had over $300,000 in liquid instruments. So I had, and that was 10 years of living expenses. So I was not a courageous, venturesome, admirable man. I was a cautious little squirrel, saving up more nuts than I really needed and not going very deep into my pile of nuts. And so it wasn't that courageous, and I kept one foot in the law firm while I tried my capitalist career. But as soon as the capitalist career succeeded, I intended to lift that second foot because I recognized that the potential of law practice, as I saw it then, I didn't anticipate the boom that came to the big firms. I just saw it as being more difficult, and I wanted more independence than I was going to have as a lawyer. I hated sending other people invoices and needing money from richer people. I thought it was undignified. I wanted my own money. Not because I loved ease or social prestige. I wanted the independence.
I was wondering how you can thrive as a polymath in a world that celebrates specialization.
Well, that's a good question. I don't think operating over many disciplines as I do is a good idea for most people. I think it's fun, that's why I've done it. And I'm better at it than most people would be. And I don't think I'm good at being the very best at handling differential equations. So it's been a wonderful path for me, but I think the correct path for everybody else is to specialize and get very good at something that society rewards and they get very efficient at doing. But even if you do that, I think you should spend 10 or 20% of your time into trying to know all the big ideas and all the other disciplines. Otherwise, I use the same phrase over and over again. Otherwise, you're like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. This is not going to work very well. You have to know the big ideas in all the disciplines to be safe if you have a life lived outside a cave. Well, cloning is, of course, it's not an ambiguous word when you use it biologically. But when you take it into some other field, cloning is a very interesting idea. You do remove ideas from one place and bring them into another. And if that's cloning, I do it all the time. Of course it's useful, if I were you people, to look at what other people you regard as great investors are doing for ideas. The trouble with it is that if you pick people as late in the game as Berkshire Hathaway,
Right.
you're buying our limitations caused by size.
Sure.
You really need to do it from some guy that's operating in smaller places and finding places with more advantage. And of course, it's hard to identify the people in the small game. But it's not an idea that won't work. If I were you people, of course, I would do that.
What do you mean?
I would want to know exactly what the shrewd people were doing, and I would look at every one of them, of course. That would be a no-brainer for me. I look at my background as absolutely privileged. I'm proud of being an Omaha boy. Yeah. I sometimes use the old saying, they got the boy out of Omaha, but they never got Omaha out of the boy. And so that, all those old-fashioned values, family comes first, be in a position so you can help others when troubles come, prudent, sensible, moral duty to be reasonable, more important than anything else, more important than being rich, more important than being important. An absolute moral duty, because none of my intelligent relatives suffered terribly because they didn't advance higher.
You said that any year in which you don't destroy one of your best loved ideas is a wasted year. It's well known that you helped coax Warren towards quality, which was a difficult transition for him. I was wondering if you could speak to the hardest idea that you've ever destroyed.
Well, I've done so many dumb things that I'm very busy destroying bad ideas because I keep having them. And so it's hard for me to just single out one from such a multitude. But I actually like it when I destroy a bad idea because I think I'm on the right. I think it's my duty to destroy old ideas. I know so many people whose main problem of life is that the old ideas displace the entry of new ideas that are better. That is the absolute standard outcome in life. There's an old German folk saying that describes it. He says, we're too soon old and we're too late smart. That's everybody's problem. And the reason we're too late smart is the stupid ideas we already have, we can't get rid of. Now, it's a good thing that we have that problem. In marriage, that may be good for the stability of marriage, that we stick with our old ideas. But in most fields, you want to get rid of your old ideas. And it's a good habit. And it gives you a big advantage in the competitive game of life since other people are so very bad at it. What happens is that as you spout ideas out, what you're doing is you're pounding them in. And so you get these ideas and then you start agitating and saying them and so forth. And of course, the person you're really convincing is you who already have the ideas. You're just pounding them in harder and harder. One of the reasons I don't spend much time telling the world what I think about how the Federal Reserve System should behave and so forth is I know that I'm just pounding the ideas into my own head when I think I'm telling other people how to run things. So I think you have to have mental habits that, I don't like it when the young people get violently convinced on every damn cause or something. I think they know everything. Some 17-year-old wants to tell the whole world what should be done about abortion or foreign policy in the Middle East or something. All he's doing when he or she spouts about what he deeply believes is pounding the ideas he already has in, which is a very dumb idea when you're just starting and have a lot to learn. So it's very important, that habit of getting rid of the dumb ideas. And one of the things I do is pat myself on the back every time I get rid of a dumb idea. And you say, well, can you really reinforce your own good behavior? Yeah, you can. If other people won't praise you, you can praise yourself. I have a big system of patting myself on the back. Every time I get rid of a much beloved idea, I pat myself on the back, sometimes several times. And I recommend this same mental habit to all of you. The price we pay for being able to accept a new idea is just awesomely large.
Berkshire and Warren and you were known as value investors. Is that not the core discipline of Berkshire Hathaway anymore, or does that not even matter?
Well, you got to remember that in our way of thinking, all intelligent investment is value investment. Because why would you want to buy something which wasn't worth as much as you were paying for it? And who wouldn't like buying something for less than it's worth? So the only difference, when people talk about value investor, you're always a value investor. Now, there are various ways to look for value investments, just as there are various places to fish. And if the first rule of fishing is to fish where the fish are, the first rule of value investing is to find some place to fish for value investments where there are a lot of them. And of course, it's gotten hard in the United States to find easy value investments because the world is so competitive. And that accounts for a lot of what you see in Berkshire, where we buy securities like Apple that we wouldn't have bought in the old days when we had more mundane things that were serving us very well. So we're just looking in different places, but we're value investors.
And so
some people, when they say value investor, they mean somebody that emphasizes working capital or something, meaning you should fish in that particular place. But I think that's all, I think it's a bad use of the language to think there's a difference between value investing and other good investing. All good investing is value investing, by definition. And so there are just various places to fish for value investments. And of course, as the world gets tougher, you have to fish in places you didn't fish before. Coming to business, not as business school graduates, but as people who had owned portfolios of securities, we thought like capitalists because we were always in the shareholder mindset. And a lot of people running the businesses think like careerists. And believe me, you got to think like a careerist to some extent if you're in a career. But it also helps to look at the business strategy problems as though you're an owner. And so my advice to you is you don't want to never get to be a careerist so much you don't see it from the owner's point of view. That's what General Motors did. They had a bunch of careerists, and an owner would have seen immediately that their situation was hopeless. And they just romped through it with a lot of denial and stupidity and pomposity. And of course, they went bankrupt. The mightiest company in the world went bankrupt. And none of those hotshot executives thought like an owner. They would have seen that it was hopeless.
Charlie, I'm Warren. You can tell us apart because he can hear and I can see. That's why we work together so well. We usually have our specialty. What's your dream now? He says,
My dream? Well,
Let's skip the first one.
Sometime when I'm especially wishful, I think, oh, to be 90 again.
Charlie says all he wants to know is where he'll die, so he'll never go there. And so you. But life has been awfully good to me and Charlie, so we have no complaints.
What you don't want to be is like the man, and they had his funeral, and the minister said, now it's the time for somebody to say something nice about the deceased. And nobody came forward, and nobody came forward. He says, surely somebody can say something nice about the deceased, and nobody came forward. And finally one man came up and he said, well, he said, his brother was worse.
Yeah.
As you look back on your life experience, what's the most important piece of advice that you would offer everyone in the room tonight as they look forward into their futures?
Well, there are a few obvious ones. They're all ancient. Ben Franklin, marriage is like the most important decision you have, not your business career. It'll do more for you, good or bad, than anything else. And Ben Franklin had the best advice ever given on marriage. He said, keep your eyes wide open before marriage and half shut thereafter. It's amazing how if you just get up every morning and keep plugging and have some discipline and keep learning, and it's amazing how it works out okay. And I don't think it's wise to have an ambition to be president of the United States or a billionaire or something like that, because the odds are too much against you. Much better to aim low. I did not intend to get rich. I wanted to get independent. I just overshot. And and by the way, while you're clapping, some of the overshooting was accidental. There's a big, you can be very deserving and very intelligent and very disciplined, but there's also a factor of luck that comes into this thing. And the people who get the outcomes that seem extraordinary, they're the people who have discipline and intelligence and good virtue, plus a hell of a lot of luck. Why wouldn't the world work like that? So you shouldn't give credit for the unusual. A lot of the people, a friend of mine said about a colleague of his in his fraternity, he says, old George was a duck sitting on a pond and they raised the level of the pond. There are a lot of people that just luck into the right place and rise, and there are a lot of very eminent people who have many advantages, and they've got one little flaw or one bit of bad luck, and they're mired in misery all their lives. But that makes it interesting to have all this variation.